is part of the deal. Anyway, let's take some questions for me or for our panelists. Yeah.
Hi. One of the recurring themes in your book is these progressive reforms, which then 10 or 20 or 30 years later, some clever, well-moneyed influence power manages to twist to sort of further entrench their vote. So I guess my question to the panel is, which progressive reform are people pushing today, which 30 years from now is going to boomerang back on us?
Well, let me just make one comment about that before I turn. What I really try to say strenuously in the book, that this is not, in most cases, there are exceptions, this is not in most cases a story of evil people turning something good toward, their evil purposes. I don't think that the person, who invented mortgage-backed securities woke up one morning and said, I'd really like to invent something that in 20 years is just going to kill the American economy and I'm going to get rich. It's more a matter of this all happened kind of in slow motion through steady progress until it was no longer progress. It's a very good idea that, drugstores should be able to advertise that they give discounts. It just, when that sort of moves down the continuum to where it is today, it's different. My answer to your question is, I still think that the looming, one of the looming issues is the continued use of the First Amendment for corporations to evade all kinds of regulation, including one of my favorite issues, which is the marketing of drugs. And I think that can be nailed on the merits with legislation. The campaign finance piece of it, I actually think, unlike Nick, that really requires a constitutional amendment. Because I think Citizens United was actually kind of right. And even if it was wrong, it doesn't stop a Tom Steyer or the Koch brothers from donating all their personal money to campaigns. But I'll let you guys go.
It's interesting. I read the book carefully, and much of it resonated with me from work as a former staffer for Senator Kennedy, fighting the drug companies, and having been a partner at Skadden Arps. I seem to, Where's Waldo appear in different places. And I thought hard about this because Ralph Nader and Alan Morrison is here. When Ralph Nader was fighting for the disclosure of drug prices so that people could compare and get better prices, he wasn't thinking 30 years later. And so when you say what is it, it's happening now, it's hard to know. Although Steve Hall, who's our legal director, is here. We often talk when we're taking positions in court, how can this be used against us? How is this going to come back and bite us? And in fact, we often use the phrase boomerang. We often say, where's the boomerang? Now, you can't always see him, but you do have to think about, Ralph was not a dummy. Ralph was at the top of his game with the top team you could possibly get at the time. Some boomerangs you can't see because they're perfectly not only well-intentioned, but they actually have a very important public good at that moment.
They have merit. There is a lot of merit to the argument that the First Amendment is as much, if not more, about the right to hear stuff or read stuff as it is the right to speak. So the listener's rights are really important.
In campaign finance, it's often said the left innovates and the right takes advantage of the innovation. So super PACs, non-disclosing nonprofits, if one side is to stand down, the other side would run roughshod over them. But it's a losing game in the end. So I don't think anybody. It's not popular, but unless there is leadership to show a path away from this enormous, funnel of money, this whooshing sound of millions of dollars, that's where we're at.
By the way, you do know that PACs and super PACs were a creation of the labor unions, not corporations, as a way to get around restrictions on unions themselves donating.
Yeah, and the first major exploitation of a 501c4 was the Democrats, who pieced together Americans coming together. Remember ACT, which was put together by a group of labor unions and others to back John Kerry's candidacy. That was the really, I think they raised 90 million, 70 or 90 million dollars.
And then
You
came
would probably
Swift Boat Veterans for Truth.
Right, exactly. Yeah. My biggest concern about this moment is that I think that we are entering an inflection point, and I think that we could try to put together a big deal. My fear is that it's going to end up being is that we're either going to all stay in our silos, and people are going to talk about transparency and ethics, and people are going to talk about gerrymandering, and people are talk about money and politics, and we actually, again, I want to push this idea that we actually have a tremendous teachable moment right now to try to tell a comprehensive and broader story to the public about why the tower of democracy is wobbling so much, and to rush in with solutions that, a slate of solutions that actually fit together in their minds. Otherwise, what I fear is that you'll end up with a bunch of piecemeal reforms that will just, it'll take the Swiss cheese that already is the campaign finance and ethics system, plug a couple holes up, but you still end up with a system that's, leading the wrong way and that people don't believe.